Welcome to Dem Boyz, a podcast about Immaculate Grid. I'm Paul, the Saints fan. Brandon, the Cowboys fan, cannot join us today, but I am very excited to be joined by two very special guests, both of them celebrating recent championships for some of their favorite teams. Adam, the UConn Huskies fan, coming off the women's national championship this past week, and then Alex, the Eagles fan, who, as I told him before we recorded, Brandon is not here, but it's not because he's an Eagles fan and Brandon's a Cowboys fan, I promise. So, gentlemen, thank you so much for taking the time today. Welcome to the show, and I'll just let you guys kind of, if whoever wants to go first, do a little quick introduction of themselves, and we'll get to it.
So my name is Alex Bonilla. I am a data developer here at Sports Reference. I primarily focus on taking care of the databases for our football sites, so for pro football and college football. And I also help out with the scheduling the football Immaculate Grid, as well as men's basketball and hockey currently. And we have a couple of different people handling the grids, but for this podcast's relevancy, I handle the football one.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I'm Adam. I'm the executive director of design here at Sports Reference, and so I focus heavily on the design and user experience of the sites and all of our products. And I'm actually not a football fan, so I that's why I made sure to get Alex on here, because I won't be able to answer any questions about actual football, but I've been heavily involved with the Immaculate Grid project ever since we launched it too. So I do schedule the baseball grids, though. That's my thing, so I can certainly talk about any differences that we have between baseball and football and things like that. So excited to be here.
Yeah, and again, thanks so much. So let's start there, Adam. So how did, this might be a very simple question, but how did Immaculate Grid kind of come together, I guess? Like, what was there inspiration for it? Was it just one day somebody around the office is like, hey, you know what would be cool? Like, that kind of thing. So,
yeah, it actually wasn't that. An independent developer actually created Immaculate Grid, and we only found out about it because, well, we did have some people on staff that had heard about it and were playing it, but all of a sudden we were getting some very strange entries on the website in like the trending players section. We're like, why is Carl Crawford or Babe Ruth trending on baseball right now? And it turns out because they were popular answers in that day's Immaculate Grid. So what ended up happening was so many people were playing Immaculate Grid that it had a strong impact on our traffic, and that made us take notice. And then it was very quickly that we decided, should we purchase this? Yes, we should purchase this. And then we very quickly converted it to like use our database and to link off to our sites and things like that. And at that point, it was baseball only. So we also rebuilt it in a way that, you know, we could launch football and basketball and women's basketball and hockey and a couple different soccer games too. So yeah, that's kind of how it came to be. Like, we didn't actually build it. We purchased it and then kind of expanded it to all of the sports we covered.
That's yeah. Now that you mention it, I totally forgot about that, because I think I was playing it before you guys even purchased it. So yeah, so thank you for reminding me of that. So and I should point out, Adam, I mentioned to you before we started recording, you were on a recent episode of is it Effect? What's the name of the show? Effective.
Or is it the Ordinary Effort one you mentioned?
Ordinary Effort. I'm sorry. Yeah, Ordinary Effort. Yeah, apologize. I had a brain fart there. But yeah, and so I will say, based on watching that show, Adam is a treasure trove of baseball Immaculate Grid. I haven't played that one in a while, but obviously I started with that one, and as you guys kind of grew from there. So Alex, let me go to you. How did you kind of get? I mean, I guess working at Sports Reference, did you just kind of was it something you were excited to work on, or was it kind of grew into it? How's that go?
Yeah, I mean, even when it was just baseball only, I would occasionally drop in. I'm not a huge baseball fan, but enough to like I can get like three or four answers on an average baseball grid. Yeah, so I already enjoyed it. So when the opportunity showed up to make a football version of it, I was especially excited because that was one that's like, oh, okay, like something that fits. And with football specifically, players, especially in the modern age, like switch teams so often now with free agency and
Right.
trades that there's a lot of opportunities for that kind of brain connections in the way that
Yeah.
baseball fans have for their players and their grids. So I was excited to be able to take it over and take a crack at adapting grid for football.
Yeah. So Brandon and I, we start the show each week with an Immaculate Grid. Because I'm a Saints fan, he's a Cowboys fan. We call it our patron saint slash cowboy of the week, and it's very much inspired by what you guys do. So just to put that out there, recently we've kind of with the off season, we've kind of also incorporated another category, the first round draft pick category, because
Mhm.
obviously the draft's coming up a couple weeks here. So we try to do things, and then when we preview our games during the season, we also do an Immaculate Grid match for each game. So like
Oh, nice.
if the Cardinals are playing the Eagles, let me see if I can get Alex here. If the Cardinals are playing the Eagles, we might say this game is presented by Kevin Kolb, or
Okay.
something like that. Just kind of, and that's because that's kind of really how Brandon and I, we were friends before, but that's kind of how we really our bond grew, was over Immaculate Grid. We would just send each other. It started out we would do all the big three, I would say: baseball, men's basketball, and football, and then we just kind of it just boiled down to football afterwards. So it's like, okay, so let's start this show here. Um, so I'll pitch this question out, and either one can go to either of you on categories. So I know with baseball, and obviously the baseball grid's been around a little longer. What are you guys up to, like 700 now on that?
Yeah, well over 700 now.
Yeah. So I know on that grid there's a lot more categories, uh, and I know football. Brandon and I have on the show kind of talked about, like, because when we do these patron saint cowboys, we'll kind of go through the statistics, and we're like, oh, I wonder if that could be a category or something. So I guess what goes into determining what categories are used, and is it like how does that process work, I guess?
Yeah, I'm lucky in scheduling baseball that we have a lot more to choose from. Just it's a more stat oriented game, and there's also, you know, even more years of history than the other sports have as well. But in terms of like what goes into a category, interestingly enough, we're in the process of creating some new categories right now. I don't know. You guys can be the first to know. I was just looking at on the testing site. There was a category for recorded an interception, which could lead to some defensive players being able to be used more often. So recorded an interception for the Falcons, or I don't know, maybe you could have like have a combination with some of the other more interesting offensive stats too, if there's any players that would match there. So that one we felt we wanted to add because like the ingredients of a good Immaculate Grid category are there are plenty of matches because people like having options. They like digging in. They don't want to just have three guys to choose from. They want to pick that guy that they remember, and having that having the category have a lot of potential options and a lot of like different things it can be paired with. So it can be paired with a team, but maybe also paired with some of the other biographical type of categories we have. I don't know if you, Alex, you contributed to this list of categories we wanted for football, so you can kind of talk about what were you looking for when you suggested some of these.
Yeah, I think as you mentioned, you're trying to, especially for the stats, you're trying to find milestones that people actually think about from time to time. So for football, with rushing, receiving, like hitting 1,000 yards. Well, it's a lot more common than it used to be, but that's still like a notable line in football that gets referenced. And same with passing yards. Like nowadays, 4,000 yards is like, oh, you had a great season. But if we want to extend that to all of history, like there was a time when just 3,000 yards was enough of a milestone. So we decide like we'll leave it there, so it allows for a slightly larger group of players to choose from. So that's like the balance we gotta figure out of like milestones that people would be able to have a general sense like, yeah, I think that player hit that line at least at some point during their tenure, but also keeping it open enough that it doesn't restrict the choices too much that like somebody gets frustrated that like a certain player who was known for being productive but maybe didn't quite reach that mark. So it's there's definitely a balance to try striking there.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Brandon and I were talking on the show this week. We brought up the Hall of Fame category, and I said, well, obviously you're not going to do Hall of Fame and say Saints because there's not that many that have played for the Saints that are in the Hall of Fame. We'll hopefully add one in Mr. Breeze next year, but so that makes total sense about having enough folks in the category. I'm glad Adam, you brought up the interception category. One of the ones that Brandon and I, because I know there's a sack category right now. It's like 10 or more sacks in a season, 50 or more sacks in a career. So we were thinking with interceptions, like we just didn't know what that number was, and I guess that's part of what you guys have to do on your end is like figure, like Alex, like you were just talking about, like is it 5 interceptions in a season? Is that too much? Is it 3? So yeah, that's exciting to hear. We got some. Bless them Boyz breaking news here.
Yeah. I mean,
I appreciate that.
some of the categories in baseball that have gone over really well is the positions. So, but what's nice in baseball is you can like this player played this position X many games. We have that with like quarterback and football, but I don't think that it goes too deep. So we're trying to think of like proxies for the other positions. So that's where the interception came from. I'll give away another one. Like kicked a field goal is going to be another one. So hey, now you've got kickers, and I don't know if we have the data to say this person played kicker, but we do have the information to say they kicked a field goal. So that still has plenty of options. And similar in like soccer, we're going to add, played goalkeeper, that type of thing. And, we'll be bringing some more to basketball and hockey as well.
Right. Well, that's really exciting. It's nice to see, obviously Immaculate Grid is great because we use it as a part of our show. And it's nice to see you guys are continually evolving it and keeping it going. One of the things Brandon and I also do on the show from time to time, is we will play a game of Immaculate Grid against each other. So, and I'm not pitching this to you like in like $1 million idea. So don't take it that way. But the way we do it is one of us goes first. We pick a square. Let's say it's for the sake of this example, let's say it's Saints Eagles, just to keep it local here. And then they'll do a player. So like if I pick Saints Eagles, I might say Darren Sproles, and then we'll look at whatever the percentage is. Brandon goes and he picks Zach Bond because I know that's sticking a lot of Saints fans' craws right now. But and then we'll just compare the percentages. Whoever's lower wins the square, and then we just move on and we go through all 9, and then whoever has the most squares at the end they win, and if there's a tie, then we just look at total overall score. I'm sure that's something that I don't know if. So I guess I asked that question of like, have there been thought of? I guess is there a way to make this kind of a competitive, like to where 2 people can go against each other outside of just I do my grid, you do your grid, and we just like that kind of thing?
It's funny that you say that because the team just took part in a week-long design exercise thinking about things like this, like focusing like on the sharing element, like here's my grid, then comparing grids and things like that. So it's definitely something that we're thinking of. I don't have any announcements that anything's imminent, but it's certainly and something that came up was like there's so many different ways to play as well. Like you were doing like individual squares at a time. Some people do lowest rarity overall. Some people do,
Mm.
if you're not immaculate, then doesn't matter. Like that, it's immaculate or not. That's how some people do it. And then others play like Family Feud style. They try to get like the highest score possible. So I think that's one of the reasons it's been so successful is there's so many different ways to play it, and it's not necessarily prescriptive. But I like the idea of adding more things that makes that
Yeah.
flexibility usable in other ways, like whether it's here's two people that played this grid, here's some cool stats about it, like this person won x many squares, this person had the lowest individual score, this person used three players for the first time, or something like that.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear. Speaking of, you mentioned stats, I do want to shout out the recent enhancement, fairly recent enhancement about the grid stats. That was cool to see, especially for me. Like Brandon and I, we find these guys just on the football side that are like our go-tos, and like for me, it's like Jason Babin, who played like 10 years in the league. You would never know it like on face value, but then it's like, oh, he has 50 sacks. He played for, I think he played for the Eagles. He played for several teams. Um, but then he also had 50 or more sacks, a 10 plus sack season. He had like all those different things that like once you dig into it, it's like, oh wow, he's or like one of my guys. I grew up in Louisiana, so I have a lot of access, I'll say, to like guys who played football in Louisiana that I knew growing up, like Eddie Kinnison. Uh, Kevin Falk is one of my favorite. Uh, he played for the Patriots up in your neck of the woods there, Adam. He was my favorite Patriot one team only guy. Is Kevin Falk, because I went to the same high school he did. So
Nice.
that's my claim to fame, I guess. But anyway, uh, but to your point, Adam, like that's the fun of this game is like it allows you to kind of dig in a little bit on those categories. Excuse me. One of the things on the Ordinary Effort podcast that I listened to with you, Adam, and you guys kind of mentioned this, so I'll bring it up here. One of the, I guess, enhancements that they brought up was being able to select a grid based on a team. So, like, instead of having to go through, like for football, I think they're above 500 now, going through every grid and saying like, okay, trying to find one with like Saints on it or Cowboys on it or whatever. Is that something that maybe in I don't want to say in the works, but is that something down the pipe maybe?
It comes up often, and I think it's a good
Okay.
idea. I don't have a timetable on it, but I have found that too. Like, I have filled out over 500 grids on my baseball one, but there's still a couple hundred other ones, and I'm like, oh, which ones have this category? I would love to jump into those first, or even just like seeing who you played for a pair of teams before. Like, oh, I don't want to play the same guy again. Who did I play last time the Eagles and Saints were in play? So I can avoid using that player. I think there's a lot of different applications for it.
And along those same lines, Alex, let me ask you, since you're the football scheduling guy,
Mhm.
what goes into day to day? How much thought is given into like especially if it's like during the season, let's say, or the best example I can think of is like Super Bowl Sunday. Is it like, okay, it's Super Bowl Sunday, we're definitely going to use the two teams that are in the game with maybe some other categories, as we go along, like maybe on a Thursday night, we're definitely going to use those two teams that are playing that night, or if it's Thanksgiving, we use the whatever. Can you kind of speak to that, like what goes into that process?
Yeah, so fortunately, it's not all entirely manual. Our programmers here at Sports Reference have developed like an algorithm to give you kind of a guide to start off with. So putting in teams that haven't been used recently, figuring out like okay combinations that are not the hardest in the world, but are like to try keeping it like a balance, and then from there I'll go in and adjust as needed. As you mentioned, like there are times around like Super Bowl Sunday, I think was the Saturday. I think the Saturday I had Chiefs and Eagles, and then like four stat categories. Or like during the season, yeah, like Monday night league football, I'll like make sure the two teams are that are playing are involved in there just to keep it kind of themed. So I'll jump. I will adjust to be timely with those things around Hall of Fame weekend. Like if there's a player that played for several teams, like I think I did this for Dwight Freeney when he got elected. I made a grid that like included all the teams he played for in a sacks category. So yeah, so I try to like have fun with it and see if
Yeah.
anybody notices. And every once in a while, you get a couple people pointing out the Easter eggs, but also just in general, we try to like keep it on a rotation where like no team is used too frequently, or like you never want, you usually don't want a team, the same team in back-to-back grids, a stat category, like you try to avoid having them twice in the same week. So like there are like certain guidelines that we try to avoid, but we definitely are have the freedom to like play around with it a little, and so I do some of that during the season.
I have to say selfishly, my favorite days are when it's just three teams down, three teams on the road, three teams on the column. The categories are great, but for me, that's my sweet spot. I guess is
Mhm.
especially on when I would play the basketball side, because that was my first sport, my first love. I guess was NBA, and so like I could pull out some of the most random player. I can't think of any right now, but if I would pull, I remember one time I was doing the grid and I thought, oh, I think Loy Vaught, who played for like the Clippers years ago, I was like, I think he fits this category. And I'm like, where did that come from? Like where like I can't remember what I had for lunch yesterday, but I can remember Loy Vaught played for the Clippers and the Pacers, I believe, back in the '90s. But
And I'll just chime in for football. We do that always on Sundays, and with this internal stats that we have, the team categories are generally lower guess rate than team stat. So because of that, the Sunday ones are always like the hardest ones in terms of this, people who are able to complete all nine of them. So in my head, it's like kind of like our version of the Sunday crossword, where that's like the hardest one of the week. So we
yeah,
have we reserve Sunday for the all team grids normally.
makes sense. Makes sense. So kind of going back to the categories real quick, because I just thought of this.
Mhm.
Uh, First round draft pick, since the draft is coming up, obviously that's a probably a popular one. Has there? Well, I guess two questions. First, what went into the calculus of it can be a first round draft pick that has played for the team, not necessarily drafted by the team? And then second, is there any thought of expanding it to just drafted by team, or something along those lines?
Yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex, but I feel like that's the first time we've gotten that feedback on that category. We made it so that you could use players who ever played for the team too, just really to open up the pool of possibilities. And we found that anytime that we make that decision, it usually works out well because people love digging in deeper. That if they could have 20 players to choose from or 100, they would always want to choose from a pool of 100. So that was really it. Like, so I don't. It would probably be tricky to do one that's just drafted by the team, because then we would have to like communicate it to the users like, oh, this is very similar to the category you've already been using, but it's slightly different. So we'd have to be careful of that. But otherwise, it's certainly not something that we'd ever be against doing.
Yeah, and I'd say also this is more of an issue with basketball, but over there you'll have a lot of cases where a player is drafted by a team and then immediately
Right.
traded. Football,
Right.
the most famous example of that is Eli Manning and Philip Rivers, right? So like we
That's
in order to like avoid those kind of like that's it's like we'll just give it to you if you put out
yeah.
Eli Manning and
My,
Chargers together.
my two favorite matches are. This happened the other day. We played it on the show, I think, last week. It was the category was Chargers first round pick, and I used Eli Manning, and it was and Brandon was kind of it was like, oh yeah, you could do that, because technically it was. Or in the NBA, I'll do Penny Hardaway and the Warriors, because he was drafted by the Warriors, and then like you said, Alex, immediately traded to to the Magic. But what disappoints me is that other people have thought that of that too. Because the first time I saw the category, I might have been in basketball. I didn't read the description. I just thought, oh, okay, first round pick, Saints has to be a first round pick for the Saints. So, I did whoever it was, like Jonathan Sullivan or somebody from way back in the day, and then by accident one day I did I did like Chase Young, and it worked, and I was like, wait a minute, that shouldn't work. And then I read the description, it's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. As one of my former bosses used to say, reading is fundamental, and fundamentally people don't read. So, but
No, honestly, like that's part of our philosophy with making things as open as possible too, because
Right.
like we could say
Right.
like, hey, read the rules, like this is specifically how it is, but being realistic, not everybody's going to
Yeah.
open
Yeah.
it up. So if we can be more open about accepting guesses, that saves everybody a lot of headaches.
Yeah. There's other cases like that too, like on the baseball side. For Dodgers and one team only, would Jackie Robinson work, or the fact that he played with the Kansas City Monarchs mean that he shouldn't work? So we ended up writing the rules to a lot of people would write in very angry if Jackie Robinson didn't work there. Technically, he did play with another team, so it's
Right.
we accept him in both ways. And yeah, I mean, just going back to the first round pick thing, the reason could just be as simple as I think I had just listened to the audiobook bio of Bo Jackson, and I was like, oh, should he be Raiders or Buccaneers? And then I'm like, how about both? So it just could be that simple too.
or like John Elway could technically be Colts, or right? Because or no, he wasn't drafted by the Colts. Well, John Elway, I guess could you use him on the baseball one because he was drafted by the Yankees.
He
But
did
he's
play in the
never
majors
been
though.
a major league team. So.
Okay. Well, that was going to be. So I'm glad we went there because that was going to be my next. So, obviously we have the draft, the NFL draft coming up 2 weeks from today. So that stock of players will technically not be available for first round pick until they played a game, right? Okay.
Correct.
So I can't do Shador Sanders Saints maybe until he actually logs a game in the NFL.
Yeah, and actually, as like a little bit of a reveal behind the curtain here, one category that I avoided having scheduled this year was Vikings in first round pick because JJ McCarthy never played, and I kind of knew
Okay.
like he would be like a very common guess that people would get wrong.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll save that. We'll see if I can hold off until next season
Right.
to
Can you-
deploy.
Can you add in a missed an entire season for injury category? Maybe no, we won't go there. We want to keep it positive on the grid here.
Yeah.
I do need to ask this question. My co-host Brandon would be mad at me if I didn't at least ask this question, no matter how silly it might be. Any thought of changing the name of the football version to Immaculate Gridiron?
I believe there's already a game called that. So
There you go. So I'll
I
point
don't know
Brandon to that.
although I don't know if it's still around. Maybe.
Maybe, yeah. Who knows? I know. Wow, because that's kind of the reason I started the questioning by asking about how the idea come for. I know that there's like movie version of this now. Vulture does I forget what it's called, like Cineflex or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's catching on. The grid craze, I guess, is catching on. I have an app on my phone where it's like you can do more than 3x3 grids. You can do like 5x5s or which I don't know why you want to, but you can do that. So I'm trying to think if there's any other questions I had. Any other things you guys want to plug, maybe tease going forward for the grid, or?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's actually really exciting right now. The grid is kind of taken off again. We're seeing numbers that we kind of haven't seen since 2023 when it first came out. It's I don't know if it's the start of baseball season, people are just getting back in the swing of things, or it's just, we released the stats feature and that's got re-engaged some people. So I would recommend going to Immaculate Grid and signing up for that free account so you can either see your stats from the games you've played, or if you haven't played in a while, you can fill in all those games and see some cool stats about the players that you use and things like that. Yeah.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question for each of you. Who's, and it could be on any of the sports, baseball, basketball. Who's like a favorite go-to guy, or on your or player, I should say, if you do the women's basketball? Who's a favorite go-to player for each of you?
Do you have one, Alex?
Well, I'm like looking at my top players that I'm using. To a dirty secret of mine is that I don't play all the grids because it's like I'm the one who schedules them, so it's like it feels weird
Right.
to like. But I will say Jay Cutler's up there. Like he bounced around the league for a while.
Yeah.
Nick Foles, I like to sneak him in
Okay.
wherever I can. I feel like generally I go for quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks if I can. Josh Johnson is also somebody I'll plug in.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that those are the players who switch teams a lot that I can like keep track of. It's harder for me with guys like offensive linemen or defenders, but like John Kidna was somewhere in the league at some point in the 2000s.
Yeah. Yep.
So like that's like the group of players I will like jump to first.
You could also loop in the McCown brothers, Luke and Josh McCown. Although one of them actually is not as many teams as you think. I can't remember which one, but there's one.
But Josh has definitely been around.
Yeah. Adam, what about you? You got who's your?
On the baseball side, it's very clear. Julio Franco is my guy for many different reasons. Loved him since I was a kid. Do a lot of research on all the countries he played baseball in, and he played for a lot of teams, and he was sneaky good. Like people don't realize how good that guy really was. So I like to use him a lot. Number 2 on my list is way behind him, but it's probably the previous generation's Julio Franco, and that's Minnie Minoso.
That's a new one. That's a new one for me. One of my, I will say this about baseball. One of my proudest achievements, and that's kind of sad when I tell you what it is, but one of my proudest achievements on the Immaculate Baseball Grid was I did an all Seinfeld grid. So all 9 players had been referenced on Seinfeld at some point, either appeared or were just referenced. So I was pretty proud of that one. So but that was that's another. I guess unifying force for Brandon and I is the show Seinfeld. We do a lot of references on that. But
Keith Hernandez, center square.
it was Keith Hernandez, Paul O'Neill, Jay Buhner,
Ken Phelps.
Ken Phelps. Well, I don't know if I got Ken Phelps on that one, but yeah, he would definitely been. He was in consideration. There's a scene where Kramer goes to fantasy camp and like he hits Mickey Mantle. And he has to come back and tell Jerry the story. I watched that scene like 3 or 4 times, trying to catch every name that he says, like Hank Bauer, like all these different names. And so I'm like, okay, Hank, okay, Joe Pepitone, like all these different names. And I should point out too, going back to the baseball thing, because Adam, you made me think of a kind of, not I want to say a loophole. But on the Ordinary Effort podcast, you were mentioning Joe Torre. That you can use Joe Torre in the Hall of Fame Braves category because he played for the Braves, even though he made the Hall of Fame as a manager for the Yankees. Is that right? Is that right? Correct? So I was trying to think football-wise if there's a analogous one, but I couldn't think of one off the top of my head. But now that has my brain going now, it's like, okay, well, so if they made the Hall of Fame for Team A, if they made the Hall of Fame coaching Team A, but they played for Team B, then I could use it for that pairing, but not like I can't say like Jim Harbaugh ever makes the Hall of Fame, for example. Well, I guess that's a bad example because he did play for the Chargers once upon a time. So
Yeah,
But,
I would say not that I've ever heard anybody say this, but like Tony Dungy, he's in the Hall of Fame. He played for the
for the
Steelers.
Steelers, that's right.
He never coached for the Steelers. I don't know if anybody's ever tried, but I don't think that would work
We'll,
as
we'll,
currently.
we'll cut this out. We'll cut this out. I want to get like that 0.0. I want to hit Brandon with that one.
Yeah, we'll have to think about that.
Yeah, that I would just when I heard Adam mention that, I was like, wait a minute, that's interesting. Well, fellas, thanks so much for the time today. I really do appreciate it. All the good grid content, and best of luck to you guys moving forward. We'll be keeping an eye on it for sure. Like I said, Brandon and I, so we do drafts pretty much every episode, and to figure out who goes first, we do a Immaculate Grid game
nice.
on the show just to figure. Usually we play whatever the one is that day, but it's it passes the time. It helps us figure things out. But Adam, thank you so much. Alex, thank you so much. Anything else you guys want to plug before we sign off here?
Hey, the parting thing, I'll give you a little more peek behind the curtain. I just pulled to see which player has been guessed the most on football, just out of curiosity. And this is a person who's been guessed correctly more than 2 million times, and the second highest is just at 1.5 million. So he's got quite a big gap. And it's Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, Fitzmagic. Yeah,
he was very, very common answer. Yeah,
I remember what I wanted to tell right before we sign off here. I went down the path of trying to figure out if there was any players who played for all 4 teams in a division. So like played for every team in the NFC East and the NFC West. And in the NFC East, there was one as a kicker named Jose Cortez, who played for Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, and Washington football team. But he also played for he's kind of like we were talking about, like the Josh Johnsons of the world. That's usually Brandon's go-to. Brandon's go-to is kickers. He feels like kickers, you can kind of, they're more malleable, right? Unless you're talking about like Vinatieri or, the guys who's like even Morton Anderson, who was a Hall of Famer and played for the Saints. He moved around. He played for 4 or 5 teams. So, but yeah, Jose Cortez is and then I think there's some other ones. I don't think it didn't work for all divisions, but NFC East for sure. Jose Cortez. So folks out there, if you get a Giants Eagles or a Cowboys Eagles or anything like that, you can use him for sure. Well, again, guys, thanks so much. Appreciate it. We'll look forward to some more enhancements coming down the pike. Thanks for the time, and happy Immaculate Grid, everyone.
Thanks for having us.
Take care.